guys, you learn how to draw the structure of the glycine very easily because it's very straightforward and it's very simple. You just need to put the oxygen here from the carboxyl group at the double bond to it, and then at the hydroxyl group to the side, and then you keep going down, and here we have alpha carbon, and over here we have the amine group, which is NH2. Okay, that easily we're going to be able actually to draw the structure of the glycine. So basically glycine, it's the smallest amino acid, but is one of the most important amino acids in the body. Why actually this one is very important? Because glycine, it's a small and it can fit everywhere, so it's going to help with the protein folding. Plus proline we're going to talk about it in several minutes later. But actually glycine plus proline plus hydroxy proline will make a very important tissue in our body called collagen. Okay, so the glycine, proline, and hydroxy proline together, they're going to make a collagen. And collagen, it's very important. Collagen, it's the most abundant protein in our body, and it's going to give a strength to the bones. It's going to give a structure to the skin, and it will divide it in a different type of, it has been divided in a different types, like a type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. And the type 1 of it is going to be the most common one that it has been found in the connective tissues. And if you know that connective tissue, it's going to be like blood vessels, fat, it could be bones, and all the basically gel-like made of cells, substances in our body. The type 2 collagen has been found in intervertebral discs. Basically, it's going to act like a cushion. And the type 3 collagen is going to be found in the skin and the blood vessels. And the type 4, basically, they're going to be found in the lens of the eyes and inner ears area. So this is that makes the glycine so important. And on the other hand, if you want to pay attention to the glycine has another property, another chemical property that is going to be used as a neurotransmitter inhibitor. That means it has the inhibition type of properties. What else had that same kind of like similar type of property? Yes, that's right. That's gamma aminobutyric acid. But the difference of the GABA, all right, what we said that the GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. Is that right? Okay, we're going to start over here. And we know that that's amino acid, so there is no other way that is going to skip the main structure of the amino acids, which is like the first we're going to start with the carboxyl group over here. Okay, we're going to come down here, but here is the trick. It says gamma aminobutyric acid, so it's not on the alpha carbon, and it should be on the gamma carbon. So here's the alpha carbon. So we're going to keep going. We're going to come here, and this is the beta carbon over here. Let me just write it down. Probably is going to be better for understanding. This is alpha. This is the beta. And we're going to keep coming down. And here is the gamma. So this is the gamma. This is the gamma carbon. So what we do, we just need to add the amine to this part, which is going to be NH2. And we have it right here, gamma aminobutyric acid. And if you pay attention here to this structure, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4. What does it mean? Butyric. Remember butane? Butane. How many carbons there were inside the butane? It was 4. Is that right? So butyric, that means 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons. So it's going to be gamma. It's on the gamma carbon. Gamma amino butyric. This is the amino butyric 4 carbon. and acid, gamma aminobutyric acid. So glycine almost has the same property of the GABA, and it does some neurotransmitter inhibition in that part. Glycine also, it's going to help with another thing, because I told you this video is going to be about the clinical relationship and correlation of the amino acids as well. So it's not going to be only the structure of the amino acid. We try to open up a little bit and talk about almost like anything clinical or any chemical properties of them, that in order to make you understand it better, and better to actually stay in your mind forever, because you don't want to forget about these. And because glycine actually tastes a little bit sweet, that's why they call it glycine, and that's why it's glyce, glycer, that's what it makes like the name come from. Also, glycine, what it does, it helps with the resistance of the insulin. So this is one of the very important properties of the glycine. When the insulin try to open up the gates of the cell and let the glucose in. I have to go briefly actually to the insulin properties in order to actually give you a little bit of understanding about what's going on and what is the insulin resistance. You know that the type 2 mellitus diabetes, they're going to be like two different types. One of them is going to be like a pancreas stop, like making and producing insulin, or for example, reducing the amount of the insulin that was making, or the cells, they're going to get resistance. So what the insulin does, actually, insulin is the key for opening up the gates of the cells. Okay, imagine if your cell is a big town, and this town, there are like a lot of people in there, and all the people in there, they are hungry. And there's a huge fence around this town, and there's only one gate to get in and bring the food in, but that gate is locked. But there are plenty of food outside. What is outside? That is actually extracellular part of the tissue, and that's going to be like the blood vessels. So there are so many, so there's so much food actually in the blood vessels that are moving like a form of the glucose and the other stuff, but the glucose cannot get inside the cell because it's locked, because it cannot get in without help. That's why the insulin is going to open up that gate and let the food come in. And this is what happened. Sometimes what happened, the cell start getting resistant to the insulin. So the insulin doesn't really act on the cell. And the glycine here is going to help the insulin to lose that resistance and let the actually insulin in and open up that gate and let the glucose in. So that's what it makes actually glycine in one of the most important amino acids, even though it's one of the smallest one. Okay, great, guys. Okay, guys, the next amino acid that we're going to talk about it, and it's proteinogenic amino acid, it's going to be alanine. Alanine, basically, it's very easy to draw. What you need to do, you have to do the same thing that you did it for the glycine. Hydroxyl group here, coming this way, alpha carbon. We know that is proteinogenic, so that's why it's connected to the alpha carbon. And then adding the amine group to it. And what else is going to happen here? You just need to add the methyl group to it. What is methyl? CH3. Is that right? But we don't need to write it down because we already know there's a methyl group over here. That's why we just need to draw the line right here, and that's it. We are done with the alanine structure that easily. You see, this is how easy it's going to be drawing the structure of the amino acid. But when you do it in the Lewis structure or other kind of structures, it's going to get very hard and complicated. But this way is going to be very easy and also understandable and very, very, very scientific, because actually it shows the stereochemistry of this stuff as well. We know that which one is going inside the plane and one is actually going back of the plane. So which one is coming forward, which one is going backward. So stereochemistry is very important as well, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. So alanine is one of the important amino acids in breakdown of the tryptophan and also vitamin B6. So I'm not going to get that much into the alanine. Just know that it's very important for the breakdown of the vitamin B6 and the tryptophan. because tryptophan, you know that it was a precursor of the serotonin. There we're going to get to that one as well. Okay. All right. The third amino acid that we're going to talk about is going to be valine. Valine. Okay, valine is going to be the third aliphatic, non-aromatic, non-polar amino acid that we are talking about. When we are here, let me just explain exactly what I said. Aliphatic, that means like it doesn't have a ring. Or we say non-aromatic. When you hear like aromatic in chemical sciences or organic chemistry, you basically going to remember the ring. What is the ring? Benzene ring. This ring. Okay, you just remember this ring. Sorry about my drawing. And let me just make it better. So here's the drawing. This is the benzene ring. When you hear aromatic, basically you're talking about the ring. When you say non-aromatic, that means it doesn't have a ring. Non-polar, non-aromatic amino acids, valine. In order to draw the valine, it's going to be very easy. What we need to do for the valine, we're going to get here. We're going to put the same thing on and on. The carboxyl group right here. And then come here, alpha carbon. And the alpha carbon is here. And here we have an NH2. Okay. But here, you see the valine start with V. Is that right? Like V. Valine. What we need to do, we need to open up this V a little bit like this. All right. And add it to this part. You see? Like that. This is valine. You see how easy? We just use the name. We just use the letter from the first letter of the name, valine, V, and we just connect it over here, and that's going to be a structure of the valine. So what is the importance of the valine? Valine is actually part of the BCAA. What is the BCAA? BCAA. I think that probably you guys say it's like, oh, that sounds very familiar to me. What is the BCAA? BCAA actually is branch chain amino acids. This is exactly what you see on the pre-workouts, or sometimes you see it in the protein products that are used for bodybuilding, because valine and the next amino acid that we're going to talk about it, leucine and isoleucine, they're going to make BCAA. When you see the branch chain amino acids, that means valine, leucine, and isoleucine combined. That is exactly what it is inside those pre-workouts and all these protein powders that are sent outside, and there are so much advertising about. That's valine, leucine, isoleucine, and they are so important in making the muscles and is constructing the muscle, giving the strength of the muscles, and also the muscle recovery. So this is one of the main important function of the valine and even leucine and isoleucine. So I try to actually not to get that much into the more properties of the valine, because also, if you remember the valine from the first video, valine was the amino acid that was causing a problem in sickle cell anemia, because actually it was getting substituted by the glutamate. Glutamate actually was leaving, and valine was coming at the site instead of the glutamate in structure of the hemoglobin, and it was causing all these hemoglobin attached together and kind of a stick together, and that stickicity was causing the problem and the twist in the red blood cells component. So the valine, it's very important in muscle production and also the recovery of the muscles. Okay, and now we're gonna go. We learned glycine, alanine, valine, and now that's a time for the structure of the leucine. This one is pretty funny, but it works. I promise you, all these tricks, I just came up with it by myself. That means I was trying to find out how easily I'm going to remember all these things, and it never actually get out of my mind. Okay, now we're going to start with leucine. Okay, the leucine, again, we're going to start with the carboxyl group, always. OH here, we come here, we have the alpha carbon here, we have the, and okay, here before we put the NH2, okay, imagine when you are done with the carboxyl group right here, let me just clean up a little bit right here, okay, great. So, leucine, what I really found in the structure, easy to memorize it, after I draw the carboxyl group, what I do, I just attach 2Y like this together. You see? 2Ys. And believe me, when you grab these 2Ys, all right, let me just draw them over here. When you just draw these 2Ys over here, this is exactly the structure of the leucine. The only thing that you need to add is the amine group that you're going to add it over here. This is exactly a structure of the leucine. It consists of the carboxyl group, and imagine you just put the 2Ys right next together, 1Y and 2Y. And if you can all the carbons and the methyl group and ethyl group in there, you're going to find out exactly the structure of the leucine is what I actually draw it over here. Let me just write down the name of the leucine as well on the top there. We're going to be able to know exactly what it is. So leucine, as I told you, with valine and isoleucine, they're going to actually create the BCAA branch chain amino acid. Also, leucine is very important in the actually muscle function in the area called mTOR. So what is mTOR? mTOR stands for mammalian target of rapamycin. Okay, mTOR. What is mTOR? In a medical field, when they ask you, for example, something like mTOR, what is mTOR? Okay, you're going to start saying like mammalian target of rapamycin. Great. It's very ambiguous right now. Like mammalian target of the rapamycin, for everyone is going to get very confused. And first of all, you have to define the rapamycin and mammalian. Everybody knows that, not a problem. But the first thing that you have to know in medicine, simplify that. What is mTOR? What is made of? They're going to tell you, oh, it's a kinase. Still, what is it? This is an enzyme. This is very important that we understand mTOR, it's an enzyme. So what is enzyme? Enzyme is a substance molecule. What it does, it's going to reduce the activation energy in any chemical reaction, and by that is going to expedite the process of the reaction. That means it's going to speed up the reaction. That's enzyme. That's actually right there for speeding up the reaction. That's an enzyme. Next, okay, we realized it when we understood this is the enzyme. What else about it? Okay, now we know the mTOR, it's mammalian target of the rapamycin in an enzyme, and it's a kinase. What the kinase means, that means when you see this A's here in Latin, that means it's adding something to our molecule. And what it does is going to add the phosphate to our molecule. And this is very important. The phosphate, it's so important in most of the chemical reactions in our body. For example, in glycolysis, we know that in glycolysis, one of the reasons we're going to attach with the hexokinase, we're going to attach one phosphate group to the glucose. First of all, we're going to make a glucose molecule bigger that it cannot get out, and it's going to be precursor, that phosphate, of creating ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, and the main source of the energy inside the cell. So mTOR, it's very important in our metabolism, physiological metabolism. Also, it's going to help in the what we call muscle building, creating energy, oxygen, and nutrient for the muscles. So this is a very important kinase, or better to say enzyme, in our body and especially in the muscle cells. And when we say that, I'm sorry, I don't want to get that much into the details, but this is the problem with the medicine. When you talk about something, you have to go a little bit further down. But very quick and brief history of the mTOR. mTOR, when I told you, is a mammalian target of rapamycin. If you look at the rapamycin, sounds kind of like, when you see the mycin, sounds like an antibiotic, and you guys are not wrong, because whatever in medicine comes from the mycin, that means it comes from the bacteria. And that medication actually kind of antibiotic for, and it was kind of like an antifungal. First of all, they made it as an antifungal, rapamycin. And after all, they realized, some of the medications, sometimes in the pharmacology or medicine, you see that some of the medications are made for something, and later on, they're going to find out about the different mechanism of it. For example, you know that one of the famous one is going to be Viagra, that it was made to control the blood pressure, and after that is going to be good for the ED or erectile dysfunctions. So here, rapamycin is the same thing. Rapamycin was made as an antifungal medication.